I'm going to be talking about, actually no, hip hop says, I'm going to be talking about a topic, we playing Bloodborne. Not going to be doing any super serious stuff. Going to be putting down a soundtrack. There's going to be chill steady beats too. If anybody's seen my channel, at least one of my channels and stuff, seeing that it's been hasn't been the most complicated, but just trying to talk about some stuff. And then I've played these before. Chill Steady Beats 2 Instrumental Jazz and Hip Hop Music 2016 from Chill Hop Music. So I try to give people their props when I'm playing their music. So okay. So what does it mean to be fake? Now, what's the expectation of being fake? So you hear me? Hello? Hello? Okay. Can anybody hear me now? Okay. So, what's the expectation? Is it being, what is being real versus being fake? Is it honesty versus dishonesty? Is it consistency versus inconsistency? To me, in my opinion, the idea of being fake is it's the idea of, rather to me, a misalignment of introspection versus introversion versus extraversion. And I don't think that introversion is necessarily accepted into the black community unless it's like exploited, via like, oh, you got these people who make funny videos, but they might be like introverted people. And I think unless it's profitable, so it's like if this person's making money, then I'm like, hey, great job, King, great job, black man, you making, it's almost like that's how we're valued, by how much we can produce, rather than like just us being us. And that is not just, because I've seen people say, hey, great job, black man, get that money, black man, but it's like, I'm Donnell, I'm Donnell, a person who likes art, who plays games, who likes talking about philosophy, a lot of stuff, and I'm not discounting my skin color or my culture or anything like that, but I do want to say that I'm a plethora of things, and I'm not just a body, a black body, Okay, 1 second. So, to me, also the idea of being real is this idea to be consistent, consistent as a person, whether you're hanging out with a CEO or you're hanging out with the police or something like that. And so, makes me want to think about Dave Chappelle's When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong. And by that, it just shows to me like how one of the faults of being consistent in your character and not necessarily adjusting to the situation around you. In various forms of When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong, these characters that Dave Chappelle portrayed, these characters get into trouble because they can't adjust to situations. They can't lower their hypermasculine nature, in which their status needs to be on the line. But and it shows that that these places, like these scenarios in which a person needs to be wise, use tact, and show some discipline and some self-control, it just shows, okay, back where I'm from, we don't tolerate that. Back where I'm from, we don't back where I'm from, we don't just let people talk to us like that. And it's just like, sometimes you need to just keep your mouth shut at sometimes. And sometimes it's okay to attack And sometimes it's okay to defend, and sometimes it's okay to just kind of be patient in the moment. And I like to go back to the idea of the hypermasculine. You know, what is like, and what does it mean to be hypermasculine? And to me, to be hypermasculine is almost to be disagreeable to the point where anything that doesn't fit this standard that you created for yourself is unmasculine. And to me, oh shoot, it kind of reminded me of I forget his name, but from like My Hero Academia, there's this guy whose definition, like his I guess his definition of his character is masculinity, and it's like essentially being a good person is one of the most masculine things you can do. But for him, it's in his superpower, his quirk, which is being strong, being tough, being able to protect your friends and defend it. I haven't gotten to season 3, so I don't know the extent of what that is, or what the extent of his definition of masculinity, but that's essentially the idea of just being brave and having endurance and braving the elements, even in the midst of even when it's it doesn't seem like it's the best way to go, you know, or if the times are tough, then a real man like perseveres through the hardships. So yeah, sorry about this. I don't know when this is gonna happen. They said my service is not service, but connection is really weak. But to me, I'm just gonna keep on rolling. Hopefully you can still see the gameplay. You know, just give you something to look at while I try to get my thoughts together. Now, to me, I think there's an allure to what is understood to be the masculine. Because I think this idea, especially in a hostile environment in which status is king, essentially, the most dominant person wins the respect of everybody. And I think even then, this idea of the hypermasculine male who has to fight against other males, other peers, two reasons why they say is weak for a man to cry. You know, it's weak for a man to show any emotion apart from endurance and like a stoic mentality. You know, he has to work hard. He has to be the breadwinner. He has to show strength, initiative, be a pillar of strength rather than a pillar of just his humanity. You know, he has to be all these things, and he can't cry, and he can't be upset, and he can't break. And if somebody says something to him, he can't show like cracks in his armor. Like it's just not possible for this particular individual to be anything but what the standard of masculinity is. And again, back to my idea of the allure of the black, not so much the black man, but I like to think of similar environments of when there's not really much equity in terms of like status and economic gain. So essentially it's like, if you can't get anywhere else, you know, if you can't really win at anything else, whether it's anything else, then you find things, you know, at least based on what I've been understanding, you find things to grab. So going back to this allure of the hypermasculine male and essentially the hypermasculine dominant male. Now it's funny because the idea, at least the idea that was coined, is, to me, from what I can understand, coined as introversion and extraversion, is from this psychologist named Carl Jung. And those who follow me know I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson. He is a big fan of Carl Jung too. and the ideas of the introversion of a person versus the extroversion is, while it could be a bunch of things, to me the understanding is that the introverted male is somebody, or I guess the introverted male is somebody who, a male who can find ease, who can find, extroverted male is a male who can find ease in social situations, who actually essentially gets their energy, gets their motivation and drive to interact with people because they're around them. You know, they get energy off being around social people. And the extroverted male is essentially a person who, while they can interact and, you know, be around and survive and thrive, well, not so much thrive, but they like social settings, but they can't really tolerate a new setting or a social setting without essentially being socially drained or even socially uncomfortable, for that matter. And so in a hyper-masculine society, at least to me, in like urban areas such as like the black and such as parts of the black community and urban settings, cities like deep cities and stuff like that, there's this, and especially poor deep city areas, I think there's this concept of, since if this concept of hypermasculinity being the thing you search for, the thing you pursue, the thing that makes you the person, that dude, you know, the ish, you know, and given that like the shit, whatever, you know, I'm just trying to get past these blockades. If like, oh man, he ain't cursing, man, I ain't trying to hear this. It's like whatever you want, you know, at least in terms of the verbiage. But this is at a point where, in my opinion, the hyper masculine male, the hyper masculine, even not even the hyper masculine, but the I guess you could call it that, the hyper masculine female, the hyper feminine female finds this thing alluring, the hyper feminine male finds this alluring. If you now I have another thought. If anybody has seen Down the Rabbit Hole, he has this episode about a guy who made a city for rats. If I'm right, I think it was that. I think I'm using the right example. So he in his study, he learned that it could have been that one or the furry one. It was one of those. But essentially, they learned that the dominant rats were essentially like, they didn't really have a problem, but when it came down to the submissive rats, they didn't want to compete anymore. In fact, they were essentially fawning over the dominant rat of the same gender. Now, these are rats. All I can say is just take that for what you will, but and I'm not suggesting anything definitive, you know, because that wouldn't be fair. I think there's many parts, but to me, the what do you call it? The and in this aspect, I like to think it involves that, because in terms of survival, and I also learned this from like it was a DeviantArt page about this person, and I think it was like was it the rainbow bird? It was a bunch of birds. I can't remember the YouTuber's name, but they did like this these sketches involving like and they use people to describe these birds and how these birds interact with other birds. You know, how some birds would pretend to be a female to survive against the dominant bird. You know, like they would just essentially hide, pretend to be a female, and essentially mate within. And you know, to me it just shows that shows the various forms that both people, both species, like these species, how they survive. They survive. They don't just survive in one way. They survive in various ways and forms and fashions and stuff like that. And so, again, I'm not saying anything definitive. I just say, hey, that alludes. Could it possibly allude to human behavior? Possibly, potentially. You know, especially those who adopt the evolutionary standpoint. But again, there's nothing definitive. It's just a thought. So it's like, could this ideal of hypermasculine dominance, and to me, I think that's what it is. And I know during that time, Jordan Peterson, he had changed the term from dominance hierarchy to competence hierarchy, but I still think the term still is valid, because even though it suggests a harsher tone of like dominate or be dominated, and in this revised version is more so like be more competent. And I guess in a sense that's kind of like, even though it's less harsh, it still suggests the idea of, in terms of competence, you have the ability to be competent versus, and be more competent than the next person, versus in terms of a dominance hierarchy, it's just kind of like a game of who will trump who, you know. And I guess it makes more sense. It's a lot more technical, and it gives more of a freedom to a person to suggest that I just need to be more competent. Now, another thought I had in regards to this was just like, what was it? Dominance. I can't remember what it was. I had a thought. But I'm sorry. But moving on. I saw this video, and it was about these two Canadians. I can't remember their names, but it was like, it was suggested how these two Canadians, they did a study in Chicago, and they suggested, it was like Margaret is somebody. They thought that what if the black homicide rate was connected to social dominance, and that was where I had got my conclusion before, because the idea of like, if you don't have anything else, inequality breeds murder, essentially. Like, there's a correlation between inequality, social status, and murder, the murder rate. And I was like, that's really interesting, but that makes sense. Going back to the idea of what it means to be real, I think the concept of what it means to be real is far more expanded now, because of the prevalency and the popularity of hip hop. You know, people like hip hop a lot more. Oh dang. Oh dang. Oh man. But yeah, getting hip hop and this idea of what it means to be real versus what it means to be fake, I think a lot more people understand the concept, and even regularly use the concept of this is what we want to be, and I think even the desire for things to be rooted more in reality, things to be rooted more in honesty, and what's the word, I can't even remember the idea, the mindset, but essentially the idea of honesty, the idea of an honest reality, a reality that is clear, that is concise, that is unlofty almost. I think that's one of the reasons as to why hip-hop has gotten so popular, because of this brutal honesty. And in Christian hip-hop, why that concept has been so favored, so valued, because people want real music. Like for instance, the idea, like for instance, NF, if anybody knows NF, is to me a popular artist, especially within the Christian hip-hop realm, which is in itself a niche genre. And one of his tags is not even a tag, but I guess one of the things he mentions is that his stuff is real music. So I think the idea that even in the majority society, the concept of being real is well known. And I'm actually surprised I actually got through all my topics. But given that, I like to think that go back to the idea of introversion and extroversion. So given our ideas of what they are, I still believe personally that the idea of introversion and extroversion, they're not static terms, in the same way that when people say you're alpha or you're a beta male, those are like static terms that essentially can't exist. I mean, can't change. They can't change. You know, they just suggest you're inferior or you're superior. And one of the ideas, especially in the hypermasculine communities, is that it's a constant battle to be essentially be better. To be better, or be dominated, you know. And the idea of the competence hierarchy is just essentially be more confident than the next guy. So there's always a chance in terms of the idea of being more competent, because anybody can be competent. And there's incompetency is in the eye of is in the will of the beholder. Even like playing this game, it's about competence, it's about learning, it's about failing, it's about continuously trying, you know. I don't think I could have played this game on the first try and get this far, let alone kill everything with the power that I have, if I didn't like practice and all that stuff. Which is the idea of confidence. You continue to you learn. You be brave enough to continue to learn. And I'm pretty sure, apart from the boss, and I got most of these enemies. But yeah, I'm sorry. If I go back to the idea of what it means to be fake versus what it means to be real, I don't think it's a matter of consistently being one person, because to me that's not necessarily being real. That is more so being in line with being extroverted, because extroverts can be themselves 100% of the time. You know, they can be this certain person 100% of the time. For introverts, they have to adjust, you know, and the only time when they are actually extroverted, because these states of being can be interchangeable, which shows the fluidity of man. Mankind, actually I didn't kill everybody, but yeah, mankind can be okay, there's more people. Mankind can be fluid in the same way that they say gender and not gender, sexuality can be fluid. It would make sense as to why. Ouch. Why personality can be fluid too. But as they say, I could be wrong, but as they say, personality is like the climate, in which it's like almost are overarching, and your mood is like the weather, in which it changes. I could be wrong about that. I think I just based that off like what was it, Tracy Marks? Yeah, YouTuber and yeah, I think YouTuber and psychiatrist Tracy Marks. Yeah. So, but yeah, given that your mood won't always be the same, you know, and I help people understand that it's just you know, what it means to be real isn't a static idea, you know, and to adjust is one thing. To suggest that being fake is to be disingenuous, you know, to not be honest, to not be clear up front, to not be a kinder person, or not even just kinder person, but to be a person that's like that is truthful in their identity. But even then, like, life happens, life changes people. People's expectations are sometimes different, sometimes wrong. They have to adjust who they are. But the idea of identity, I think when a person grows up to be this person, grows up to be somebody that they themselves want to be proud of, it's not just a identity that is static. It's almost like building a house. You know, you need to have a good foundation, some core convictions, and you continuously build off that, and then hopefully during the crashes of war or the crashes of life, and just things that you just can't control, that changes you, that challenges you, that shapes you, you're now in a decision of, okay, who am I in this moment? Where do I go? You know, where do I go from here? And essentially the things that stay are the things that are truly precious. And then they fashion who you are. They're not things that like change like the tide, you know. And there are some people who have a harder time than others conforming to an image that is, I mean, they have a harder time developing core convictions. And some people's convictions go as far as to involve other people negatively. And perhaps maybe this is in response to a cruel world where there were people just like them who took advantage of them, and before they were just people who didn't know any better, or people who didn't have any positive or strong convictions to actually survive. But instead of succumbing to such people, they became the object of evil, or the object of contempt, or fashion something to avoid such torment, but themselves became a greater torment, or a torment that's just as bad, or just as prominently ugly as a figure. But to me, it's a concept. It's a concept that's not really like, not the most thought out. It's something that I understand, and maybe in those circles, that's where it's understood as to be real. I want a group that is real. Is that environment, because your reality is static. Your reality, like a chair, doesn't become a banana in 2 seconds, or just because the moon is out, the sun doesn't. I mean, your chair doesn't suddenly turn into like some ectoplasm or something. You know, so it's like these things are objective, and I think they want someone's character to be almost something that's cultivated, to be, as they say, real, to be even more so honest, to be something that is genuine. But the idea of being genuine isn't something that is based off something that is I don't think it's something that's based off a concept that is either alpha or beta, or something that's just so simple. because life is far more than just simple things, simple ideas. I mean, oops, sorry. They do have simplicity in it, but the human experience is both complex and simple. Where people can get Facebook quotes, Facebook tweets. I know that's kind of weird, but like give simple knowledge. But at the same time, when it comes down to like in your own words describing how life is, you could give an answer far different because your understanding, your perspective are completely different. You know, they're not. Those things aren't. It just suggests that life is something that is far different than you make them into. And it's something that just requires a lot of thought, not just a lot of thought, but a lot of wisdom from other people. You know, it's one reason why I do enjoy video essays, because I learn stuff from other people. Like with these video essays, they teach you so much. There's people, they express a lot of ideas, a lot of concerns. And so that's it tonight, guys. The idea of being fake is, it to me, it's just simplicity, a oversimplistic and generalized model of what it means to be a genuine person. And you just need to grow and learn and gather wisdom and experience a lot of stuff actively in your world to actually get past, to be essentially real rather than fake. You know, to me, fake is, in introverted circles, being fake isn't a matter of not being honest or genuine. It's just being around who you're comfortable and adjusting to those around you to be comfortable. That's what it is. Some people aren't comfortable with that idea, and they revert to, like, nah, you just fake, bro. And it's just like, you can't force people to unthink what they've thought or unthink the learning that they have. So I guess that's it. Yeah. Take care, guys. See you next time.